Welcome to the Harbor Board meeting. We'll do a roll call here. Okay. Got a quorum? Look over the minutes. Did anyone want to change anything about the minutes from the last meeting before we approve them?
I move we accept the minutes as proposed.
All right, without objection, we'll consider those approved. How about adding anything on to the agenda? Proceed with it. Heard related to the agenda. Would anybody like to speak?
Hello, I'm Jim Floyd. I'm here I have two titles that contribute to this. One, I'm the President of Chamber of Commerce, and second, I'm the General Manager, CEO of Hammer Recon. So I would like to talk about the discussion of the American Cruise Lines. I listened to the last borough meeting. I went and talked to Glow to try to get a little bit more information about it. The way I've been here 5 years next month, and the way I see it, I am concerned about the future of our great community. And right now, we have three forms of revenue coming into our community. We got government, which we all know. We got the Coast Guard, Department of Forestry, the airport, which is subsidized, the schools. There's other ones too. We have fishing, and we know about the challenges the last couple of years that we faced with the fishing industry, including people are aging out. More and more, we see more government regulations controlling and making it harder for us to do business as a fishing community. The third thing is responsible tourism. I've been advocating it since I've been the president of the chamber. What I mean is that American Cruise Lines is an American company. The passengers are 175, which is extremely reasonable for this community. I lived in Juneau. I lived in Juneau for 3 years running the Fred Meyer store there. Nobody wants a Juneau. I understand this. I didn't like it. I never went downtown. I don't want to happen here what happened to Sitka. Somebody came in and said, listen, we want to do this partnership, and the borough or city, whatever, it says, no, thank you. So a private entrepreneur went in, built the dock, and guess what? They have no control. So this is an opportunity where the borough could go into a partnership and have control over the interest. And I would tell you this, if it doesn't happen, it's going to happen because we have someone who just bought Ocean Beauty that's very much interested. So as I see it, we have two choices. We can either go to business with someone and have control, or it's gonna happen anyways. So my recommendation is, I know there's a lot of discussion about the money and how it's gonna work out. I say we continue discussion and take it very seriously. Okay, thank you.
Else? Anything unrelated to the agenda?
Well, it's a pretty pack-filled agenda, and I think most of the things that I did this summer are highlighted in the agenda. So if there's questions, otherwise you guys read it, and if there's questions, I can answer them otherwise.
Business. If you all remember, we talked about this quite a bit in February, hoping maybe to get something done before a property sale was done, but things move at different speeds. So here it is. We've been waiting for it for quite a while. This marine industrial overlay. How should we? You want to introduce this, Glow or Liz? Or?
Well, I guess you probably make a motion to in the positive to adopt the marine industrial overlay and then discuss it and then vote it up or down to move it forward. I think me personally, it's been before you for months now to review and to think about, and it's time to kick this can. Let's
All right,
move
well, I
forward.
entertain a motion to, I guess we would say recommend that the Borough Assembly adopt these changes. to The Borough Municipal. You're looking for a mo-
So move.
somebody want to conjure up some language to that motion? It's pretty clear what we're thinking.
It's pretty much listed right there in the agenda item.
Oh,
So. So now it's open for discussion. Anybody got?
So,
We brought Liz to the table, so specific questions that I can't answer that you have that may be more zoning related, we're both here.
So I guess looking over it, it looks like what I had in mind when I went through my whole spiel 7 months ago, as far as I recall anyway. One thing that it does in section or paragraph H is that's the paragraph that designates specific areas within the marine industrial zone. And there's just one area designated so far, and that's the Scow Bay turnaround. It says in the Scow Bay turnaround designated area as shown on MIO zoning map, the only uses permitted are the principal uses set out in paragraph C. All their uses prohibited. So maybe we've had this discussion before, but how does this interact with the fire department infrastructure out there? I'm not sure if we have discussed it before, but so is the fire department's stuff that's out there on, is there going to be a conflict? there?
Yeah, there will be. I
Right,
mean, as it's presently located, they've
Right.
been expanding and using the footprint, getting bigger and bigger. And at some point, we've been working towards this for 20-some years. And at some point, the conversation needs to happen where we're going to, line in the sand or whatever. And actually, Aaron has been forward thinking and trying to put together some thought process on maybe relocating when the time comes. So there's that conversation going on. Presently, there is, the building that houses the water truck, and then outside of it, they've kind of grown to include, training facilities, and that's gotten larger and larger. And at some point, I think it'll be time to move that out of there. I mean, just from the boatyard, that it's.
right. So I guess,
Mhm.
so one worry that I have just with the language that it is, as it is right now, is like, I want to make sure that I think we all want to make sure that the definitions and, the new definition of the zone and so on, want to make sure that passes through. And my intention would be to make it as uncontroversial as possible, just to make sure that it does. And I don't know how controversial putting the Scow Bay turnaround part in there is. I personally don't have a problem with it, but
Well,
you know.
The Scow Bay turnaround is our next big
Yeah.
economic, project. And so it's time now. We've got the funding package together pretty well for that first phase. And so part of that will be defining, how that all is set up once it's expanded. So
So, I mean,
Yeah.
does my worry make sense? So like, suppose we pass it as it is, recommend it to the assembly, and then the assembly passes it as it is. I mean, does the fire department have to back up and, I mean, how soon does the transition, I mean, I guess that's kind of the question, is how soon should we expect the transition to be, basically? In it,
Well, the
Yeah.
first phase, we're hoping to go out to bid next year. So yeah, no, and again, this isn't the fire department. We're not talking about it being the fire hall. We're
Right,
talking
it's
about
the
it being,
auxiliary.
you know, it being a satellite and and I don't know that that portion will get impacted, but definitely I would say the portion that they've expanded with those training, it's time to move those out.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't want to be, I would say, we don't want to be too open, because then you get yourself into a real bind if we don't narrow it down to what we actually want to see out there.
Right.
So.
If I understand your question through the chair, so you're asking if the change in zoning is going to immediately render the fire hall
Illegal.
illegal,
basically,
right?
yeah.
So the zoning code has a provision called non-conforming uses. And so when you change the code, if there's an existing use, then that no longer complies with the code. It becomes this non-conforming use. And that use can remain as long as it's continuously used. So until they abandon the fire hall under zoning, until that gets abandoned, it would be allowed to stay. There's other pressures happening there.
Right.
That
Okay,
is what's going to happen before the zoning ever
okay, so
makes, yeah.
that
it's-
makes sense, then, yeah, so that, yeah, okay. Then I'm totally, yeah.
Is there an established border between the building of the fire department and the containers that are there and the training tower that are in the plans for development of the Scalby pad?
I believe that it's the fire building and the training, the one back in the back, but not the ones that have now migrated out towards the center. You know, right?
I couldn't really hear the question. What was it?
He wants to know if it is, I don't know, in the historical turnaround design, is that what you're?
Not so much a history, but right now, the borough desires to move forward with development of the pad. And is there an established line that you are using? And how close is it to the building structure itself? Because right behind the building, you have the 4 or 6 large containers and the training tower. Is that staying with the building itself right now on your plans? for
I've never
development?
seen the ones that are out in the center where they've migrated. The training tower has been there for quite a
Yeah.
few years. The 5 or 6 that they've welded together and put more out in the center, I don't believe those are really been identified as on any.
So there aren't really any lot lines on that turnaround except for lease lines. And so that fire hall area is actually just part of the whole.
So,
The lines that we do have are the old lines from when the state owned that property. And we have a survey of what those original lines were, but like those containers are now outside of that original boundary line. But the phase 1 development, it doesn't necessarily encroach into that area. I mean, at some point, you want to start using more space for boats and less for fire hall, but it's not like immediately tomorrow,
So at this point, it's mostly discretionary and cooperative with all parties.
Because those things could be moved.
Thank you.
Could, Glo, you or Liz speak to the, I think there was a reference to a zoning map or something, but where is the overlay? Does it exist now on a map? Hypothetically? Are we talking about some boundaries here or? Liz, go ahead.
Hypothetically, yeah.
Like,
We had a draft one around and for whatever reason, I didn't put it in here, but it's basically the Port Dock area and the land adjacent to that, that the borough had an ownership, and then the land that the borough owns at Scow Bay. Yeah. But it doesn't include anything that has previously been in private ownership. So it's just it includes the property. Brock and the Wecon, because that was part of that Port Dock that was in borough ownership. Yeah.
Assembly votes for this, are they applying it to everything on that map? Or are they just creating it in the ether and would that be another step?
And we're going to put the map on there. Yeah.
Just one comment going back to the fire hall. It is a complex issue because there's insurance rates that will be affected whether that building is there or not for the entire community. And so it's going to take patience and cooperation among all parties to come up with a solution. That's all I got.
You said you've been working with Aaron, trying to figure out a solution.
Move forward with the whole.
One last question. On the overlay, if I understand it correctly, who's the enforcer? That would be the planning department, correct? Not the harbor department of zoning requirements?
Right. We generally enforce it through issuing building permits or changes in use of a structure or alterations or anything like that. So that's how we enforce zoning throughout Service Area 1.
Favor?
That was put on there. We had a request from Member Spiegelmeier to put it on. And so, I just kind of came up with an idea of review and make recommendations to the assembly to approve a letter of concern to the U.S. Coast Guard regarding damaging wake issues along Wrangell Narrows. And then I visited with Chief Kerr about the actual enforcement inside of the harbor boundary. That's our preview. I've added in the packet examples of the signage that is hung all over, as well as on the ends of the floats. We have the big wake with the slash through it. And I don't know if it did any good, but there was about as much, if not more, wake issues as we've always had. And I don't know if it's because we had more traffic or just because it's the nature of living on the side of a freeway like we do. And there's not much we can do. But Chief Kerr actually went and visited with the Coast Guard to just, make sure that we all know kind of where the line is that they oversee and we oversee. And so maybe you want to let him speak to, or if you have specific questions. Chief.
I thought that might be why you were here.
Okay, James Kerr, Chief of Police. Glow, of course, mentioned the wake issue. Heard several times during the summer, people yelling at each other on the radio about it. And then I think it was one of the harbor employees brought up the CFR. So actually, before I get to that, the harbor and the borough code, that the speed restriction that we have, the no wake, that's only within that area that you guys have on those maps. And so we always get the after the fact type thing. Why didn't you guys need to do something? Well, actually, it starts with the people that are observing it, either videotaping it or calling us or something, but it always happens after the fact. Everyone wants to complain after the fact. So if it's something where someone needs a ticket, it needs to happen like now. And if it bothers that person that bad, or if the person's driving reckless, I mean, just give us a call, give the harbor department a call. They'll call us on our cell phones if they can't get a hold of, I mean, we'll get down there, or they can get down there and observe it, identify the driver of the vessel, and we can issue a ticket after the fact. And just by making whoever the complainant is, whoever observed it, make them go to court with us if the person fights it for the borough ticket. But then came up the issue with the CFR. And CFR 162.255, Wrangell Narrows. And under B, it has speed restriction. No vessel shall exceed a speed of 7 knots in the vicinity of in the vicinity of Petersburg, between Wrangell Narrows Channel Light 58 and Wrangell Narrows Lighted Buoy 60. So we're talking down there past the ferry terminal to the one right here by PFI, or OBI now, sorry. And so when I went to the Coast Guard, I asked them about enforcement of that, and they're like, oh, we don't know anything about it. So they pulled it up and they said, well, there has to be restrictions listed or exemptions listed. And so one of the problems they instantly spotted is that we land float planes out there. As soon as they touch the water, Coast Guard says that they're a vessel. So they need to be adhering to the speed limit, which I didn't know anything about that stuff because I don't enforce that stuff. And so I asked them what it would take for them to enforce that. And they said they weren't, because they didn't know anything about this, and they leave at 10 knots when they leave. And then of course we have the problem with the tide. When the tide's ripping, I mean, how fast is that? That's faster than 7 knots going past there. And so then you have a barge when they come in. If they're getting pushed by the tide, that's bad. They can't slow it down really. And so when I talked to the Coast Guard, they just looked at, like, this is, for them, it's basically unenforceable to be proactive. They would have to be reactive to something like this. And so for them to issue a citation under this, it would have to be something that's caused damage within the harbor. And then they would go back, get the video, do their investigation, and then they would send their tickets up, and then they would send the vessel owner a citation for it. That's the way they explained it to me. I asked them about speed enforcement, and they kind of laughed at me about that. They said it takes them like 10 minutes to warm up their radar. They have to have video from so many different angles. And then they just explained it was a nightmare to try to even do something, that they wouldn't be proactive, they would be reactive to this. So I thought I would share that information with you guys, because it was something that I learned last week as well. So.
Monitor 16 and just dispatch.
Yeah, they do. We usually keep it down. If something, we always get drunk. We hear so much radio traffic, you just kind of blank it out. But when you hear the Mayday calls, you hear the pon stuff, you hear someone asking for help, that stuff always jumps out of you because it's something different. as far as radio calls on 16, the best thing to do is if there's an issue, call the harbor department and they'll call us if someone doesn't have a cell phone. Or just call us directly on the phone. I mean, that place is manned 24/7. So,
But in an instant of, a wake that ends up in the harbor coming from, the middle of the Narrows, nothing you can do.
nothing that we
Right.
can do. That would be, if it causes damage, that would be the Coast Guard that would do that. And that's there after the fact, after the act investigations.
So I guess what I'm hearing is the best thing we can do, because I'm the one that asked to get this put on here, because I mean, you guys know I'm on the dock most of the day in the summertime. Even today, we had the Nushagak Spirit come through here. 12th man was unloading and it wrecked him against the pylons today. And I heard about it after the fact. I was down on my boat, pumping my boat out. And it was when he went through, Seth went through. And I mean, our docks are getting more and more damage from the bigger wakes that are coming through, which ultimately we're gonna wind up having to pay for. Because, it only takes so much movement. I know Dan's a local operator. I see him go out every day. All the local operators, they adhere up to 60 and then they take off at 60 and they all come down at 60. I think a lot of it is the transient. Maybe it is about getting a campaign out there where we're like they do in Sitka, they make the people, the transient vessels know when the harbor master talks to them, they stay in the wait zone. They do it all the time during Sitka herring. I know it's a little bit more radio chatter, but it's, I just think something needs to happen, because I mean, I guess the 12th man took some damage today, so I haven't had a chance to look at it. But
And that needs to be filed
Mhm.
and, we gotta follow through. We have to, follow through instead of just talking about it.
it was the Nushagak Spirit.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw because I wound up, I didn't know what boat it was, but I got in my truck and drove out to Libby Straits to see who it was.
Okay.
Because I knew that, the 12th man was gonna wanna know. Thank you.
Yeah, it seems to me like it's a wake issue, not a speed issue. Like a used craft going 8 knots that's like peak wake for that. Oh man, it's pretty big, but then they're okay once they're up on step, so. So a lot of what I see is boats, maybe they think they're helping by not getting up on step, but they're just wallowing there, making a big wake as they get out of town.
I mean, to be honest, between 58 and 60, it's 3/4 of a mile. It's not that far.
That is.
I'm the operator of the Initiac, what was the name of the vessel?
It's Nushagak Spirit. Yeah.
And the other vessels that cause us, do you think it's just being unattentive, asleep at not really fully asleep, but
Well,
just,
Part of it is it was probably peak tide. It was, it's 19-foot tides
Big
right
ones.
now. And that is, we had a real incident that happened with the tugboat. And it was a local guy and we went back and forth, but the reality is they have to keep steerage, but they have to slow down far before they get to the mouth of the, Narrows. And that, in this instant, he was going slow, but that following swell came in and it was horrific. And we took a video of it and sent it all the way up the chain, and that kind of thing. And it's those kind of incidents. Again, it's back to Wrangell Narrows is really a tough place to manage that kind of thing. And it's hard because the Coast Guard has really inadequate communication. So their comms have been down for years. Even in the case of the Red Can being missing, they were doing ponds and all you heard was And for years, it's been like that. So you go to them and they don't have, the ability to, to enforce, even over the radio. So we've got signs, we spent $10,000 this year on signage and, office or, it's, anyway, I'm not trying to make excuses, but if there's other ideas out there, let us know and but back to if they're damaging things, you've got to report it. We've got to follow through. We've got to set examples and, give tickets, but I can't hear about it 15 minutes after it happens and then try and get a policeman. I mean, we would call the police and they're not just sitting around waiting for a call. So it takes, time to get them down there. So.
Well, I appreciate you putting it on the agenda. I know it's a tough issue, but, we see it all summer long and just for somebody who's on the water a lot and who sees boats get, especially with that hard face, these guys pull up to the hard face and it's.
I mean, when something like that happens, like what apparently happened to the 12th man today, could he have recourse to say, call up the Nushagak Spirits Insurance Company and file a claim? Or, is that a thing? Or do you have to have like some kind of, you gotta take a video of it and you gotta watch the wave going and you gotta watch the boat going like, I mean, how much proof does he have to have?
Well, in my experience in my prior life with the Coast Guard, we handled, because you're supposed to own your wake. So in an area like that, there is repercussion, but he would have to follow the Coast Guard procedures and.
It'd be more of a hassle than just fixing yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there is, you're in a no wake zone. The own your wake is, I know it's probably more prevalent in sportier areas like in Florida and whatnot. But, it still applies here. It's still an applicable, rule, so. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Don. Next, we're up to the American Cruise Line dock proposal. Appreciated your comments there, Jim, getting us started on that. Casey has a nice.
Yeah, I
sheet
mean, I
with some
could,
thoughts. You wanna go
I
ahead?
thought about it a little bit, and these are my thoughts. So I have what I take to be sort of uncontroversial opinions, like, number one, I'm interested, tell me more. I take that, it's uncontroversial because it's just basically reporting my own inclinations about it. But then the second one is that we should maintain as much borough control over the waterfront as possible. I mean, witness the marine industrial overlay thing that we just passed. This should be built into anything that we do. And then the third one is that we should expect to get a piece of the action. We shouldn't just be doing this just to facilitate business without expecting, we should get something. These are all like obvious, basically, I think. But then there's sort of more controversial ways of fleshing out these things, and that's the down below there, 1-star, 2-star, and 3-star. And so 1-star says that the borough should obtain conceptual plans and an estimate of cost before we make any proclamations in favor or against. And in addition, we should also clarify what exactly is the proposal and what is the relationship going to be between the borough and American Cruise Lines, sort of in the form of some kind of legal documents before we should really even, come to any opinion, really. And I take it that that's kind of what the assembly is already, already pursued this aspect. Is that correct?
That's what's before you, is to review the Americans' proposal and make recommendations to the assembly to use borough funds, which we would use marine head tax, the marine passenger fee to jointly work with American Cruise Lines. So 50-50, they pay for half, we pay for half of development of conceptual drawings
Right.
for this idea.
Okay, so for some reason, I thought that that was already sort of happening. I talked to Mayor Jensen today and he seemed to indicate that maybe that was already happening, but okay. So that would be sort of upon us to, okay. But setting that aside for a second, the second thing, 2-star, which is kind of a way of fleshing out 2, is that we should seriously consider putting money towards this in such a way that we maintain primary ownership of the project if it is to happen. We should look at it and see if there's a way to make that work. And because that would allow us to retain control in the most, in the best way. So that basically, so we don't end up like a Juno or a Ketchikan.
That's an important point that superficially, some people might miss is that, if we want to control it, we're gonna have to spend some money. And I think some people might want to hit the easy button and say, make them pay for it, but then you do lose control. So already I'm a little worried about that idea gaining favor over us investing in ourselves.
That's why I agree. I think, I'm all for tourism, especially, tourism that, can be well managed. I think everybody here, nobody wants to sick of
What did Jim say? Responsible tourism? Is
responsible
that what you-
tourism. I like that term. That's where, for me, the scenario 2 makes the most sense. We get to maintain, a good chunk of the say-so and what goes on down there. And it makes sense to me to put money toward it because ultimately, who knows, maybe in 5 years from now, they have 5 boats coming in here. We get a boat a day, Monday through Friday. That keeps these guys busy. I mean, that keeps all the tourism busy in town. So that's my thought that, I don't know.
Tax.
And this is not, they're not gonna be talking about this yet. What
Right,
they're
just-
asking you for is, should we spend, the estimate that Somerville tossed out there was just about 30,000. And so should we split the difference, get some conceptual drawings, and then go on a, lack of a better term, a dog and pony show where you get the community involved and take a look at all of this and people ask questions and then at that point, it goes to the assembly to make. Okay, should we flesh out another, like, what would a relationship look like? And then we flesh out the third, just keep moving it along to see where it organically happens, I guess is. So this is really the first step of, should we just say thanks, but no thanks? Or should we support getting some conceptual drawings to look at?
And I'd be willing to put a motion for it, but I wanted to kind of give my little thought process here down at the bottom. Because I think it's gonna become relevant as this moves forward. We're really gonna have to well, what can we afford? And I was just kind of looking at that scenario 3, which by the way, there's a typo in that scenario 3. It says American investment 80%, port investment 20%. I think it's supposed to be the opposite. I was looking at it, I was like, that's too good to be true.
Yeah.
Be linear the way that.
Yeah.
That was 4 o'clock.
But if you just, and this is these are some numbers that just kind of coming off the top of my head or out of my whatever. But if you suppose that the project, let's say we want to choose that scenario 3 where we're paying 80%. You suppose the project is going to cost 10 million, who knows, but let's just say. And if at 80%, that'd be 8 million to us. And I don't know what we're willing to allocate, where all the money would come from. Let's say it came from 2 different sources. We allocate it from, you know, maybe some from general funds, some from harbor or something, whatever. And then 4 million is a bond. Now, whenever I think bond, I think, okay, loan, and I try to think of myself, well, what would I do? If I'm thinking about this, and well, I'm not gonna make an investment like this unless I'm pretty doggone sure that I'm gonna make my payment with just what I know I'm gonna get from it. And if you start thinking that way, then, so you like, if, I don't know, what is a bond, what is the interest on a bond typically? Like, what?
Well,
does it-
depends on where you go to, but I think, we could do 4%? Is that, the last time we had a harbor bond, it was roughly that.
So let's say,
Yeah.
so I.
If you get a really good one, it would be like 1,
Right,
but
so
maybe.
at 0%, 4 million's 130,000 a year. At 5%, it's 250. So I said, okay, let's go with 200 a year in payments. So the annual rent under that scenario 3 is we get 25. So now you got to find another 175. Let's say you get another 25 from, you know, letting other boats tie up there, which, and it's important to note, this is kind of the third paragraph up. Suppose we see another 25,000 from other cruise lines that dock there and who wouldn't find a spot at our waterfront otherwise. This is important. Otherwise, these revenues cannot be thought of as being produced by the dock itself. So I think that's kind of an important point. But now we have another 150 to find annually. And then under scenario 3, we get $3 a head, just not from head tax money, just from this proposal. At $3 a head, to get $150,000, you gotta have 50,000 passengers, which I don't know, is that what you'd expect to get out of the, I mean, I don't know how many times they would expect to come.
So here's some numbers to put into
Yeah.
that. So what they are looking for is a place to moor. Charlie, the owner, came through and he suggested that he is planning on building 6 ships. Okay, 150 to 75, 175 passengers a trip. So we could say once a day, you know, those are those kind of numbers. Head tax wise, we, in 2024, we saw, okay, in 2024, we saw 50,000 total, in total. That was with 7,800 coming from American Cruise Line. So if you times the 78 by 6, you know, that would be 6 boats, because this was just 1 boat. So let's just, you know, so those are kind of the numbers.
So these are basically more money that I didn't sort of take into account here.
Yeah, there's that marine, we call it the marine passenger fee at $5 a passenger, that they sell, you know, we get a copy of their numbers, and then they write us a check at the end of the year.
And so then I guess the part of what we would be thinking of is this would be where a lot of our head tax money would be going over the next, who knows how, you know, however long such a bond
Good,
would
you know,
be.
like, you know.
If we were to, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they, you know, it's $7,800 for that particular boat, and he's thinking of having 6 of those boats. You know, I don't know if you would get 6 of them a week, but that is the kind of numbers at $5. So you throw, you know, another 3 at it or whatever.
In any case, I just wanted to raise this sort of thing because
Exactly what we need to do.
eventually it's gonna be the thing that we need to do and see like, well, does this, you know, how can we make this make sense? Because sort of, there's kind of 2 kinds of investments you might make, kind of a quality of life investment, buying a new car, buying a nice house, or a straight up money-making investment. And when you're doing money-making this is not a quality of life investment, in my opinion. I would rather not have all the tourists around, it's just, but now if we're making, if it's gonna be, if we're making money off of it, okay, I can handle it. But it's not, I mean, it's not like this is buying myself a new car. It's not, we're not buying the town a new car. What we're doing is we're trying to facilitate economy. And so it's gonna have to come down to, are we sure we're gonna be making the payments on this, just on the rent? And then there should be something on top of that, which is, local businesses are gonna be, you're gonna be taking guys out, they're gonna be buying art, they're gonna be buying jeans.
I appreciate that you guys,
Yeah.
you have thought of
Yeah.
this kind of thing through, because I don't know if you guys will get it back.
Right. I know
Right
that.
now, they're asking, the mayor wanted to know, should we even move forward on conceptual drawings to have this kind of discussion, so.
Well, so I guess that my spiel on that is over if anybody wants to say anything.
I don't think that, I think it's a good thought to move forward. And I think that, not that $30,000 is nothing, but it's something, but if ultimately it gets us to where we need to be and allows it to get into the public's eye. And it's a first step. So I'm
Well-
personally gonna support that, so.
And I guess I will comment that, so the last 3 years that they've been coming, they've been coming 14 to 15 times a season. They have already scheduled for next year doubling that. So they are planning on coming 34 times this next year. And they called their scheduler called me a couple weeks ago and said, hey, if we're looking at scheduling 5 years out. If I send you a schedule for 5 years, does that mean we're locked in? Like we're the first ones? And yeah, sure, you bet. But whoa, let's just go back to 14 times versus 34 times. Okay, people. We are about maxed out in the harbor right now at 14 times. So now we're talking 34 times. This is where it's really going to be hard. I mean, I would like to see that we have a plan to get a better situation in place for this particular vessel. Because what it's gonna require to tie them up 34 times next year is we're gonna have to clean sea float off pretty regularly, kick all the tenders off to tie them up, because Petro Marine kind of has us, in a corner as well, because they use the face of that dock. They need it for their sails. And so that right now there's a lot of pushback on tying this particular boat up 14 times. And so there are times when the fuel barge is coming in, or they have to fuel up the tender fleet and things like that. So it's really going to be a juggling show for the harbor department next year with even doubling it. And so I can say that it's doable. There's going to be more and more people upset. And so if we have an end game, I'm hoping that we have an end game that is better for everybody, to just say, hold on, we can make it through a year or two because we have greater plans. We have bigger plans. I've listened to this particular company, and I think there is a path forward with them. And I'd like to explore it as a harbor master. I would really like to explore it because I think it could benefit the commercial fleet in the way that they will, the demand for the inner harbor will be less. So, if you look at a float system there, you will see that they're, Daniel will be able to tie up to the inside of that float instead of somewhere else in the harbor, and then having these people march through, or having them on the end of sea float and displacing, tenders, having them on the end of sea float and having to walk half a mile up into a very congested parking lot where we have buses staged and, you know, and all of those kind of things that really impact the daily operations in the harbor. So I would like to run the distance on this. And that'll be my recommendation as the harbor master. So just, you know, they're coming and that was their plans. And the thing he mentioned that really caught my attention was he's planning for building 6 new ships. And as part of that, moorings for these as part of the construction of a boat. He said, why would I build a boat if I don't have a place to tie it up? And they had these same conversations in Sitka and Juneau. And so we're not the only place. And I don't know if he plans on doing this in every single town or if it's, you know, he has so much to spend and whoever takes him up on his offer first. So he is pretty, he calls me at least once a week, if not more. Where are we? Have we moved this? Because they came to town in August and we kind of pushed him off till the end of the season and hoping that we could get you guys together and have a work session this fall. So Somerville has given us a proposal. And the city manager is ready to move forward with it if American Cruise Line comes back and says that they are interested in paying for half of it, then everybody has skin in the game. Everybody can, you know, make comments on what's best for them. So I think it's a little bit of a feasibility study idea. So I appreciate them. But Charlie doesn't want to spend $15,000 if he's going to get, you know, the ship's going to get sunk at this level or.
Maybe as a harbor ratepayer, I don't want to pay anything. Who's everyone? Why do you want the harbor to pay for this? I mean, it seems like a whole community-wide general fund thing to me.
Well, we do generate outside of the harbor this head tax money, and that's where the funds are coming to pay for this. So there's
Keep
no,
that in a separate bucket.
yeah, that
$5
is,
$5 is nothing these days.
right, yeah.
That's like one chum coming over the roller.
And that is kept in a separate pot. The harbor doesn't see any of it. And so I believe Jody reported at the last, they've got 150,000 sitting. And that's what pays for the toilet paper and, you know, the cleaning lady for the little porta potty out there. But other than that, they haven't. There's been litigation in other communities on how you can spend that money. This would be one way we could spend it.
Favor of moving forward very cautiously. It'll be interesting to see what the community sentiment is after the 34 ships this coming summer. Yeah.
You know, again, these boats are, you know, 150 people. So if you think of, you know, between the vendors, there's five vendors maybe that offer trips to the glacier and an airplane ride or things like that. So theoretically, half of them are out doing that, and maybe 40 or 50 of them are on Main Street if everybody exits the boat. I mean, it really doesn't seem like it comes close to having the scare of, you know. But-
I will move to, how do you phrase this? Basically,
It's in your agenda.
I mean, can I just
Yep.
read whatever's in the agenda?
So you can make a recommendation.
Use borough funds to work jointly, 50-50, I assume is the idea, with American Cruise Lines to develop conceptual drawings and you can get an estimate, you know? Yeah, I'll move.
Second.
One concern I have, and now that I think about what Jim spoke to there about investing in it, we'll have control, but what if Ocean Beauty also becomes a depot and we just have twice as much infrastructure? And I think a good question going forward is gonna be, is it the harbor structure that's limiting us, or is the town at about its limit of how much tourism we want? Like scope of that's beyond this board.
Following that up is that, like he said, he has 5 years of scheduling. Okay, so we commit to these 34 stops, or in the future, maybe it's more. 4 years from now, who's going to be displaced is the commercial fleet. Because I will be as locked into tying these guys up, right? Because they've had a schedule on the thing, and then I'm gonna have to tell every tender that you gotta go anchor out because, sorry, we're filled up with crews. So that, that's the other side
I
of it.
do feel like most everyone I hear from in the fleet feels the drive down is maxed out. Even though you could squeeze more boats in there, I mean, it's hard to access the drive down when you can't really schedule all your drive dock needs. They kind of happen, and it's a factor, so.
And this vessel, we can't tie up there because it's 283 feet. So the face of the drive down is 110. But I can't put it on the center there because of the FAA requirements with airplanes. So it has to mostly hang over 100+ feet, hang over to the north, which would shut down the entrance to the South Harbor. That's why we do not tie this boat on the drive down for more than an hour or two, if need be. If it's gonna stay a while, we're gonna kick everybody off a sea float.
I'd like to add that this, the $5, $3 fee, we could always see what the other places are charging. There's no reason why we could go to $10 or more, because that just gets put to the customer anyways.
All in favor?
Well, I gotta make a roll call or the vote. So, I have to read. Review the American Cruise Line proposal and make recommendations to Assembly to use borough funds to jointly work with American Cruise Lines in development of conceptual drawings of the proposed project. So, Joel Randrup,
Yes.
Bob Martin,
Yes.
Don Spiegelmeier,
Yes.
John Mergus,
Yes.
Daniel Cardenas,
Yes.
Scott Rivera's absent, Casey Knight.
Yes.
Okay, pass.
Item is the moorage issue, of delinquent vessels. Thanks for coming, Cynthia.
So, over the summer, I've been working with the borough attorney, and I'll just hand these out as just kind of the back of the napkin, kind of maybe give you a little idea. But we have had a couple of challenging incidents here this last summer in derelict and abandoned boats. And anyway, so getting to thinking about this, we've actually made it through, and the Pacific Queen talked to the guy who we contracted to get it out of here, is supposedly leaving by Saturday. Another one, the Alicia Haley, was sold, and it is leaving, we hope, in the morning. So, and we had a third one. Well, but anyway, we are hoping that we're back to square one on these vessels. Well, one of them was he abandoned it and stopped paying moorage and those kind of things. The other one, they were up on their moorage. It just became a derelict vessel. So thinking about all of that and realizing that we have 115 boats on the waiting list, and these these boats on the waiting list, you know, go back to 2023 and 2022. Those are kind of the earliest ones. So they're boats that really do want to come here. It's not like they've been on the list for 10 years and waiting for a stall. These are boats that actively, that call and see where they are on the list and want to moor here permanently. We don't have room for them. Now we're doing things like the minute a boat hauls out for the winter time with John, or else we'll go south for doing something, we will put somebody in there for the winter months or for as long as we can get by. So we're doing a lot of that. The other thing is we do have boats that don't move in our harbor. We have very few that don't pay. I mean, everybody, we don't have a problem with that, but we do have a problem with a certain amount of boats that just don't move. So I got to thinking about where's the fine line between moorage and storage. So if a boat hasn't moved for over a year, I'm looking at it being stored in our harbor rather than, you know, moored for the next time they go use it. So that was part of the thought process. Also, another part of the thought process is we are hoping to get into contract with the Corps of Engineers and looking at a feasibility for another harbor in Scow Bay. And how do we ensure that we can pass the red face test if they ask, are you using your harbors efficiently? Well, one of the things was we did all that dredging. So yes, we're using the harbor efficiently now because all the boats that are properly sized can use their stalls because they're not having problems getting in and out of the harbor. So that's part of that conversation, is that, yeah, I don't have a harbor full of boats that aren't moving and doing what you would hope an active boat does. So the lawyer and I came up with some, so that's kind of the premise. So we came up with a way to get there, to get some of these boats to move and be active. And so one of the ideas is in the ordinance would be after 12 months, we would attach a storage fee to boats that haven't moved. And it would be equivalent to what their moorage fee is. So essentially they're paying double. After 24 months, we would move to require a survey. They'll still be paying, they'd still be paying double moorage, but then we would require an up-to-date survey. And after, you know, give them 60 days to accomplish what the survey said they needed to do. And at 36 months, then we would be looking at insurance requirements, P&I and pollution and property insurance that would name the borough as secondary insured. So if it did sink or it did, you know, have damage to the harbor, then the borough would be covered. And after that, if they're paying more, they've got up-to-date surveys, they are, you know, have the insurance, then, you know, what can you say? They're, I believe, paying their fair share, and we are covered should something like what we just experienced this summer to happen. I think a lot of the issue would go away after people get a storage fee. You know, I think you'll see some movement, because really in the end of the day, we're asking people to leave the harbor for 24 hours. And if you're under 30 feet, 28 feet, and you don't have accommodations to spend the night, we're talking breaking it, those 24 hours down into 2 12-hour trips or 4 6-hour trips, just to show that your boat is operational. So that's kind of before you. I handed out, because I figured somebody would ask, like, what's the percentage of derelicts and the percentage of boats that don't move in our harbor? So that's what I just passed out to you. The stall length, we have a total of 577 stalls, and these are the stall lengths and the numbers that we have per those lengths of stalls. And so the boats that I'm really concerned about falling into that derelict category are there, and that gives you percentage. And then there are those boats that are, there's a situation, you know, whatever happens, they're not a derelict. They're you know, we've got some beautiful yachts that had situations where they have sat for over a year, maybe almost 2 years and haven't moved for whatever reason.
Is that this middle column here?
Yeah, yep. So they would qualify, but they aren't derelict. They're not something that I have to worry about sinking, I would say. So that was kind of the breakdown. In total, we've got roughly 45 boats. It's not a big percentage of our harbor when you especially think if, you know, a lot of them are in that 32 and 40-foot range, which I think if we cleaned that up and really moved these, especially the boats that are of concern out, you know, through this process, I think we would handle the kind of the keep up with demand, keep up with what people are requesting a turnover stalls. So a lot of boats come in and they get hauled out with John, or they go elsewhere. They're trailerable, those kind of things that we have a lot of turnover because those are the greatest number of stalls. So I think by cleaning up that number, I think it would really help our harbor be busy and you know, those boats would go away, and I think we could accommodate the need that is there. Now, when you look at zero boats of concern or zero derelict boats or boats that don't move, when you're talking the 50, 60, 75, we've got one 75 footer that you know, that doesn't move. Those also are the size boats that we are promoting in the new harbor out in Scout Bay. We're planning on building larger stalls out there because we have a big waiting list for big boats. And we don't have any derelicts and we don't have any boats that don't move. And so I think it just emphasizes the need for larger stalls in a new harbor. So that's kind of my spiel. I'm gonna bring this hopefully before the assembly here this fall so that we can start moving in this direction to help clean up the harbor. And want to support it, I can
I'll
report
entertain
that
a
too.
motion to address item C.
Item C in the agenda. Is that-
Yeah. Wording there is really more trouble, but-
Okay, I'll make a motion that we take a closer look at item C on the agenda. How's that sound?
Second.
I do have some questions about that.
Go for
actually. So I know before, and I think John was the one that brought it up, we had concerns and we had a fairly large group of people in here that were concerned about liveaboards. And I completely understand what you're saying about boats leaving for 24 hours. It's not like it's a big deal. Somebody pops into mind is somebody like Pam Speck, who I don't know if her boat can move. So I just wonder if, you know, how we would be displacing them, other than they would wind up paying double, right? That's what I'm hearing.
And then, and I guess that's a great example, you know, a boat that hasn't moved in decades, is taking up a valuable spot that, you know, a neighbor comes and goes all summer long, and we can use it as a place for transients. 20% of our revenue comes in from the transient moorage. And should that person that never moves be paying the same as somebody that is moving, and we're able to, you know, re-rent that spot. And so that's part of it. And again, so is it moorage or is it storage? I mean, she doesn't live aboard it anymore, hasn't for years. Nobody lives aboard those cases. So yeah, I think it's such a valuable, when you have 150 people on the waiting list, for stalls, it becomes really valuable.
And I think that most of the liveaboards that we do have for the people that come in the summer are movable. They,
Oh, most of our liveaboards are, yeah, they're
Yeah.
living on pretty luxury
yeah,
yachts
the-
and they are gone all summer. No, you can't, it's against code to like rent as like a, yeah, yeah, exactly. We
Yeah.
actually have code against that.
Like the nature of liveaboards that tend toward the derelict status are gonna be
I don't know that we have
Smaller.
one, so.
smaller because they're paying the mortgage themselves. They're gonna tend to be the
Yeah, and we already addressed the liveaboard. There's a 10% cap on that. And so that's, that's a pretty limited.
the only reason I brought it up, because I know that once it comes before the assembly, it will come up again.
Yeah.
You know,
financial risk to the harbor is not captured in the boat length. Displacement is a three-dimensional thing there, so the stall moorage doesn't adequately capture the risk. Of the risk.
And that is where we really started to think about the survey requirement and then the insurance requirement. Because those two will help capture what you're talking about. So the first year of not moving, yeah, they're gonna get hit with but what it's really gonna do is year 2 and year 3, you have insurance requirements.
clock start when it got accepted.
Yeah, well, so yeah, you have to start somewhere. And so I would suggest that we would send out a letter of concern, early in the year, like in January, that says, hey, you've been identified as a boat that hasn't moved. We all know because we do 6 rounds a day, so I can prove, and you can ask me about any boat and I can look back and tell you, any day that you ask, I can tell you if they were in the stall or not. And so that's the way I would approach it is, sending out a letter, you haven't moved in a year and we're going to, by year end, we're going to start this. We have to start somewhere. So
Right, so when would the clock start ticking? Are we saying that the clock kind of already was ticking, but we'd kind of give a
no, I
courtesy
don't
letter
think we
or?
can because
right.
we didn't have it in
Okay,
ordinance. So
yeah.
these are ordinance changes that the
Yeah.
assembly will have to vote on. This is just a recommendation. All I'm gonna do is take it to the assembly and then they get to go through the whole process. It's another 6 weeks for
Right,
them to review an ordinance and have a, public hearing and all those kind of things. So at best, it would be the end of the year. So I would send, letters out to these 45 that say, clock's ticking and if,
Right.
a year from now, if you haven't moved it along, we're gonna start enforcing it.
that
So
seems,
it's a whole nother year.
right, that seems totally
You
because
know?
one concern that I had is, we pass this and then we start, pounding nails into doors and not, but, yeah, no.
Well, right now, it's pretty much left to my discretion. And, I mean, it was really evident this year that, we need to get some things in order. So what we did do throughout the summer is pass ordinances to go after people that leave us, holding the bag. So in the case of the Pacific Queen, it's 84,000 that we're gonna have a judgment against.
The one.
Jim had something, yeah.
Just suggest something from the police department side, when we're enforcing like parking or we're enforcing other stuff, like if they move it, it only has to be moved so far. And so I would put in, like, if you're not out, it's just something to consider, like you guys should have so many days, they should be absent from
Yes,
the.
it's in
Oh,
the,
it
it's
is?
in the ordinance proposal, 24 hours out of the harbor.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
24
one time in
hours.
24 hours, so that's
Yeah.
like the same as us, like someone moves it one parking stall. It's
Out of the harbor.
basically met the
Yeah.
precedent.
What
Right.
if they just smudge out the chalk mark?
I know, exactly.
What-
I mean, it's pretty basic. This is really.
Basically
really-
just making sure the boat runs. you know?
Yeah, you know,
I
and
mean,
there
that's-
used to be in state ordinance, they would say you had to leave the harbor, which meant, and I remember being out there, having to watch somebody go out around the green can and then come back into the harbor. That was my job. Well, okay, we could do that, or we could just 24 hours. I feel like that is,
Does it have-
or,
does it
you
have to be
know,
Under its own power?
yes.
It does?
Yeah. Yeah, under its own power. No, we're not gonna tow you somewhere and tow you back. Or have you be towed by
It'd be
somebody.
interesting trying to sail out of the harbor.
Yes, so,
Can you use oars?
Is the boat that you have at 50 feet, is that the one that's leaving tomorrow?
it's the Betty. Oh, yeah, there's always a,
Through the city map.
I mean, the assembly can, yeah.
Situations could come up where someone would want to be able.
So I feel like it's pretty lenient.
We've been talking about it off and on now for
Mhm.
years, really.
So what is the or else clause? What?
Poundment.
So where is that, how does that, is that right there in front of the harbor shack? Is that the impoundment?
Oh, no,
Or
we've
was-
impound in place.
The
So,
chain-
Oh,
like,
okay.
you know.
Chains or?
Well, I know I don't even need to do that, but I mean, yeah, no, and outlined in code, we notify the person, it has to go out by, certain, and then you give them a certain amount of time, and there is a, they can ask for a hearing, and then there's a 10 clause, and then we have to put it up, we seize it, and then we have to put it up for sale according to what's owed against it, or, in this case, a lot of cases, it's what the attorney fees come back as, and, and then even in that case, like in the instance that I'm dealing with now, they requested to postpone the final impoundment till the end of the month, and we worked through that and allowed that to happen, and so, we're getting it done, but I think, we definitely have a process that you have to adhere to, and it's outlined, and everybody knows, and you're aware of it. You're sent a certified letter that explains the whole process.
I'm in favor. Then-
You got something, Joel?
Motion good enough? Or do we have to reword that for sending it on?
Can we get a
Is the motion
clarification on
just-
the motion, please?
Is it
Yeah,
to recommend to?
yeah,
adopt
recommend to
this?
the assembly to pass the proposed code changes to permanent mortgage.
Make recommendation. Okay, so motion is to make recommendations to propose code changes to permanent moorage to the assembly. Daniel Cardenas,
Yes.
Casey Knight,
Yes. Yes.
John Spilmar, Yes. Bob Martin. John Mergus. Joel Randrup.
Yes.
Scott Roberge, absent. Motion passes.
Thanks. Is there anything under communications? I think there was. Thought of one discussion item. Sometimes you don't realize how much live aboard parking is going on until you come, like in the summer, you come down in the evening and there. What do we have, 17 stalls in the north, or 17 parking spots, and 6 of them are live aboards? That's a cost I'm not very happy with. So I was wondering if over the year, we could think about maybe a live aboard parking fee or something like that, or a no parking discount or something like that, because that's just unacceptable to me.
Is that in Middle Harbor?
North Harbor,
North Harbor?
you know, maybe there's some overflow going on in the Middle Harbor, but it's just parking's tight down there. And this is a person who does probably not have another parking space, so they're juggling, shuffling all day. And I realize it's a hardship, but hey, those parking spots are at a premium. They were gonna be $35,000 a piece like 10 years ago they're probably $100,000 a piece realistically. And to have one of those tied up 7 days a week by a live aboard, that's not something I'm very happy about, because, you know.
Well, so we do have 4-hour parking and they're enforced and
But yeah, where do they go? They're on their boat. They just move it around. Yeah, sorry,
but
go
I
ahead.
don't, how many liveaboards do we have in the North Harbor? Stella?
Dave,
Yeah, but here in the front.
Got that, root beer and white Ford.
It goes up in the summer, definitely.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It makes
Yeah,
sense, cause I agree,
no.
cause if I go down there to check my boat at lunch, if I'm driving, you can never find it.
we could expand the Middle Harbor parking.
Yeah, the problem we have in the summertime are the apartments. And most of it is Main Street employment that is using the parking. And that's why we have 4-hour. And that, you know, and it is, I mean, it's a big job to enforce it. So just to remind, you know, it means staff hours, it means staff. So right now we've got, you know, 2+ hours a day from a staff member to monitor parking. And then we do it again, you know, in the morning, and then we do it again at one. This is once a day check. So there's a cost associated with it already, but you know, that it's tough. Yep. I just don't.
What to do?
I know, it's one of those things, I don't know. We had an estimate done, $2 million to put in 57 parking spots, which, okay, and that was, like you said, 10, 12 years ago, so.
it just seems like it's not a priority use. You know, the harbor's not meant to be cheap housing, and it's not meant to be a place to park a car.
I have a thought about this. Maybe change it to 3 hours, because 4 hours is like somebody goes to work, gets off lunch, moves their vehicle for the hour, and then goes back. So if you can start having them move, you know, sooner, or make it more of a pain to leave work early to go do that, you know, if they're working across the street or downtown, that might
It's my dream to
move
be a
some people.
harbor master, as I spend most of the time working hard on parking. Parking enforcement is the, you know, because again, that's gonna hit Casey. Okay, Casey, gotta come up and move your car.
Yeah,
You know, I
the
mean-
problem is, I go down at 8, and I'm, you know, working in the engine room, and I don't come up until 1, and I've never gotten a ticket or anything, but, you know, like, shit, I gotta
Yeah, that's not what bothers me.
But again,
sometimes you see the same truck there.
Well,
all
and
summer.
those people that don't move for 3 days
They
get,
get
they
tickets.
get 8 tickets and they get a boot. After 3 days, they're booted.
Can
And
they
then,
wipe the chalk off? Does anyone keep
No.
track of that?
yes, we do. We do it every day. I have,
I mean, how do you know that they
Dedicated-
moved or if they wiped the chalk off?
because we're human beings and it's only 17 cars to take care of.
Case in
I
point, you
got-
know which ones
I
it is.
know who they
The Same
are.
3 people, yeah, anyway.
Yes, I know who they are.
So that parking issue takes away our maintenance guys from doing
It is.
maintenance in the harbor, enforcing parking.
Because
Back in the good old days, we used to have a budget with the PD and us. We would share the cost and the cost of the tickets would generally cover the cost of the employee, but we're not able to do that anymore.
parking meter
Deputize
readers,
me, I'll
so,
do it.
yeah, yeah.
Still on discussion items? Yeah. And I didn't want to complicate the discussion on changes to permanent merge, but the one thing that I think this board is going to have to tackle someday and the whole community is what do we do with these derelict and quasi derelict vessels? The cost of disposal is beyond what most of those vessel owners can afford. And so it's a looming issue that's gonna be getting larger and larger. It's for all communities.
I've been thinking about that too.
Nothing goes in the landfill.
Not here.
So we ship it out and it costs $180
That's what I
a
mean,
ton.
landfill down south or-
$180 a ton. We get open tops in and we take them up and we dump it. So, you know, that's a real number.
That's a new thing.
Harbor, it's private property,
You're gonna end up with a lot of them, because I think
already have them.
because someone can't afford to legally get rid of a boat, so they're gonna have you haul it out.
Yeah.
So you're gonna feel.
I have to turn it down. I have no idea what the solution is, but we gotta somehow come up, the whole community has to be involved in this.
So is that not intended to be covered partially by the clause and this thing that we just recommended to have insurance? And I mean, presumably, I don't.
Yep.
I've never considered, having insurance for getting my vessel disposed of, but presumably you can do that.
That's-
Yeah, but you don't think it exists?
Yeah, property insurance, you
Yeah.
can.
It's-
I went and talked to Susan about it and that's what's outlined in here is what she recommended.
But
So.
it's prohibitively expensive.
I don't know that it is. I mean, I was looking at 12 to 15,000 to get the Pacific Queen out. Ship it out. Now, the cost came in as hiring a contractor to do the work because I have a staff of 8 people and I don't have the equipment. I don't have, excavators and dump trucks. And so it's either hiring Public Works to come and they've helped us before. But, like a 40-foot boat in average would cost us $8,000 to $12,000 to get rid of it. So that, it's not I don't know that it's that scary of a number for these people. Or to it's a project. It is definitely a project and, that's why it's really nice that we don't have big boats. I mean, we're getting rid of the 3 big boats that we had. And so we have a kind of a clean slate now. So I'd like to get ahead of it again.
No, I forget, though. There were some smaller boats that have been disposed of, fiberglass boats. Were those shipped out also?
Yeah.
Nothing was.
Already to come.
How do they do that?
Load them up on the barge and send them out.
But
Or
how-
they
How
crush them.
small pieces are they broken down into?
Well, if they have to go in the open top, you know, they're 20-foot wide containers and you crush them down into compact, but there's a weight limit. I think it's 12,000 pounds. Something like that. And it's $180 a ton. So, I mean, well, I had 5 open tops coming, so it was gonna be excess of like 100,000 pounds. There's a lot of, things that could be taken off and not, crunched up. So they were going to,
Eastern Washington State have room for all these.
they're in the business of it, so. Yeah, I don't know what they do. But yeah, that was the plan and the contractor got scared off by the insurance.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming, Jim.
Okay.
Scott.
Sure.
Action.
I'm in favor.
Okay.